Hey everybody, I'm Michael Prentke and this is the Bos Bones podcast. And I'm super excited to have Mr. Brian Thomas on the show today. Brian's been on my radar for years. He's definitely been one of the top trombone people, Bos Bones, for sure, no doubt. His name is all over town, playing with all the different people. So I'm really excited to get a chance to talk with you here because we haven't really talked much before. So
Yeah,
welcome to the show.
thank you for having me. Thanks for thinking of me.
Um, First, I just wanted to bring up that I think you've got a couple things coming up, which is a show with the your big band on the 15th. You want to mention that?
Yeah, it actually was supposed to go down last week, but we got rained out, so we had a
Oh,
rain date
bummer.
scheduled for the 15th. So a BT ALC Big Band, which is a band I run with my good friend Alex Lee Clark, who's a trumpet player in town, and we've had this band going for over 10 years now, and out of all the groups, that have, after the as restrictions have kind of loosened up, this has been the one band that's been the toughest to get up and running, just because it's an 18-piece band. But so we're super psyched. So we're going to be over at Medusa Brewing Company, and they have this beautiful beer garden, and that's in Hudson, Mass. So a little bit of a trek,
Mm,
but it's well worth it. They got awesome beer, great brewery, great people, and they got a awesome taco food truck out there and a good vibe.
nice.
That's a 6:30 show on the 15th. So
Excellent.
super excited to get that up and running.
Nice. And then you also dropped a couple of singles with them, right? With the big band.
Yeah, as soon as the pandemic hit and we kind of got shut down, I was just shooting the breeze with my friend Alan Evans, who runs Vintage League Music. He's also the great drummer from the band Soulive. And
Mhm.
we we started batting around the idea: can we record a big band remotely? And the
Yeah.
answer is indeed yes. So they tracked the rhythm section at his place out at Iron Wax Studio in Western Mass, and then kind of gradually put everything together. So the first song we put out was a song called "Bring Forth Change" that I had wrote, and we invited Nigel Hall from Lettuce to sing the hook. And Eric Bloom, also in Lettuce, who is also an original member of our band. He features him on that track, so that's nice. And then we just kept the ball rolling, and we did another one called the Iguana that featured Al's bandmate Eric Krasno on guitar, and the great Carl Denson on tenor sax. So that was cool to have those guys as guests. And then we did one more that ended up being part of the Vintage League Music Family album that Alex wrote. A tune called "What Will You Do?" Awesome tune, awesome arrangement, and we featured John Medeski on keys on that one. So
Nice.
it was a nice little opportunity to kind of reach out to some friends that are usually really busy and don't have time to do that kind of stuff. Because that was kind of the cool thing about the pandemic is if you looked at it the right way, it was an opportunity to actually work with people all over the world, and no
Mhm.
boundaries, and engage. So if that's what we tried to do. So it was pretty cool. Where I'm pretty proud of those three tracks of how they came out. Especially in you think recording a big band, you want the room mics, and you think about that dynamic. It's a little different than recording like a two-piece section or a three-piece section. But
Mhm.
I'm really proud of the way it came out, and Al did a fantastic job mixing it, and making it sound natural. There's little things, as I know there's obviously a lot of bone players that'll be listening to this, so you might hear like a thing or two like that. You could tell that we're not in the same room. There might be like a swell that didn't like quite, some ensemble stuff. But I think to most people just listening to it, it came out really good. So I'm stoked.
I hope that anybody who listens to it and is discerning enough to notice something like that is not a dick. Like, oh, the swells weren't together. I think they understand. I hope you understand that this is a pretty special circumstance. Everyone's in
Yeah.
different rooms.
Yeah.
fairly impossible. But that's great. Congratulations on all the projects and the releases and the shows coming up. It sounds like stuff is starting to kind of happen again. How's the pandemic for you otherwise? It sounds like you're pretty busy with recording, but also how's the kind of transition into maybe more stuff happening live, maybe sort of out of the pandemic?
Yeah, well, you know, I was a little bit lucky. I did find a way to perform live throughout the pandemic. I did just stumbled upon a few things. Um, my really good friend Dan Dela Cruz, who's lives out on the East Coast now, but he's in the band Slightly Stupid, which is like a Cali roots, reggae band out of San Diego. And he lives out here, and so we started like talking about how we could get some stuff going. And then he, his good friend G Love, who he's got G Love and the Special Sauce. He lives out here on the Cape, and his band was on the West Coast. So he was like, well, why don't we put together, something that we could perform with out here and kind of reimagine some of his songs, which are normally a trio. We turned it into like a big 8-piece band with horns and everything. So I got to perform a lot with that group.
All
Um,
during the pandemic.
yeah, we did a lot. We did like a residency at Hog Island Brewery on the Cape, which
Wow.
was nice on like I think a Monday or Tuesday nights. And then we did like a lot of the drive-in theater style shows where people were buying
Yeah.
pods and setting up. So man, I mean, it got rough in the winter, obviously, with because indoor stuff wasn't happening. But man, I
Mhm.
really I feel blessed that I was able to keep playing, and I was recording not only for my big band, but for a lot of other projects too. So it was
Hmm.
cool. But man, it was also really cool to be home and have dinner with my family every night, and like not always be running in like 1,000 different directions. Um,
Yeah.
we had a baby. We
Oh,
had a pandemic
congratulations.
baby. Thank you so much. So that was awesome, and and so there was definitely for me. Sometimes I hate to say it because I know a lot of people had a rough year, but man, in a lot of ways, this past 18 months has been really positive for me in terms of career wise, like being able to practice and not always run around, like to actually my Arbin book is destroyed now because I've actually used it every single day, and that wasn't when you're on the hustle bustle and you're running from one thing to another, one student, one lesson, this one gig, and it just can be really hard. So it was really cool, and now that everything's kind of coming back together, it's great. I feel like a switch was hit, and then all of a sudden it's like we're back in. It's been cool, but I do think the pandemic gave me a little perspective of you know I'm almost 45 years old, and maybe I don't have to say yes to everything, and I think I value being home with my family a little bit more than maybe maybe I took it for granted a little bit before the pandemic. So try to gain a little perspective on that is important too, to reflect and see where you're at, and what's best for you.
Yeah. So you feel like um, the way that you're sort of forced to live and survive in the pandemic might kind of inform the way that you move in the future or like make decisions.
Oh, for sure, and I probably should have found a way to have that realization years ago, honestly, but you're taught as a freelance musician, like if that spot is open in your calendar, you say yes, you
Yeah.
know, and and I think because of that, I've been successful because I've always kind of had that mentality of I'll do the GPS. Well, can I drive from here to here and make it in time? And like trying to squeeze every little thing in. And I think that's important to do as a young trombonist or young musician in general. And so I appreciate all my time doing that. And I'm sure some weeks and some months will still be like that, where balls to the walls, like going nonstop. But I think it's also cool to like take a step back and be like, okay, don't have to do anything. Like I didn't, from cutting my gig schedule down, like, so much. Obviously, this past year, the bills still got paid. Everybody was still okay,
Mhm.
So, yeah. But so I definitely think it'll inform the future, and and but with that being said, for all the young musicians listening to this, like, the reason why I think I'm in this position now is because for 20 years the answer has been yes.
Hmm.
You
So
know,
it's kind of a complicated thing. Like at some point, maybe when you're sort of trying to cut your teeth a bit, it's like you got to say yes to everything. But then maybe at some point when the
yeah,
when the time is right, you can start to have dinner with your family.
yeah, and take maybe it's okay to take that lower paying jazz club date versus the wedding because you don't have to be there till 9 o'clock, and it
Mhm.
doesn't suck up the whole day of like driving down to the Cape or wherever you have to go. So yeah, I just think it's just a matter of for me shifting of where my thought process is, and how I view myself as a musician and an artist, and trying trying to make it all work.
Man, I mean, speaking of making it all work, it seems like you've got a pretty major juggling act as far as I can tell because you have a family, you just had a baby, you have a house, you have, playing all kinds of gigs, and you're also teaching, right? You have like a in-school teaching job,
Yeah,
right?
I've been 13 years at Canton High School now.
Wow, is that full-time band director
Yeah,
gig?
I do all the instrumental ensembles. So I do the band, the orchestra, the jazz ensemble, and then the jazz combos, and then the pep band for the athletic games, and then the pit orchestra for the musicals.
Whoa.
So you know, it's an intense, but a lot of that is during the day. So I've kind of tried to structure it in a way that um, that usually by 3, 4 o'clock I can leave.
Wow.
You know.
Man, do you sleep?
Not enough. Hey, that's what coffee's for, but yeah, you find a way to make it work. I would say one of the things that people ask me, about, that question, do you sleep? I do, but there's things I don't do. Like I don't go golfing with my buddies. Like I don't
Yeah.
go, like there's other kind of sacrifices that you make. And
Mm,
then as a musician, part of your social life becomes the gigs, and it becomes playing, and you're working, you're
mm,
out there, but you're also hanging with your friends, and I try to work with my friends a lot. I feel like you make better music when you're playing with your friends. You can play with the
mm,
most killing band in the world, right? But if you don't know them, and you don't know them as, I feel like if you don't like know them as people, sometimes you don't make the best music with them, but sometimes you can be working with a lesser musician, but you might know their husband or their wife, or you might know their kids, and you might know a little bit about them, and you have a little more trust. And then all of a
mm.
sudden the music can go in a little different direction because you intimately know these people. And so I do believe you make your best music with your friends. So
Yeah.
a lot of the sacrifices that you have to make to do it, I don't feel like are sacrifices, because I'm still, I might not be golfing with like buddies from high school or something, but I am, I am with my friends playing music. So um,
Mm.
I guess that's just a different way to look at it.
It sounds like that was kind of almost like your response. It feels like, and you should probably tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that was kind of the reason you probably started the Brian Thomas, Alex Lee Clark Big Band. It seems like, I mean, one, it is like a super group, and everyone there is pretty incredible musicians, certainly top players in Boston, if not the whole region or anywhere. Amazing players, but also it seems like there's kind of like a camaraderie, friends, kind of just doing it to be together and hang out, have a reason to get together and play music at a really high level, but also because it seems like there's a camaraderie. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, well, think about it. Like we've been playing in big bands since what, sixth grade, right? And you play in
Hmm.
big bands, and you're all the way through high school. Then you do it in your undergrad. Then you do your masters, and if you're getting your doctorate, you're still playing in a big band. And then all of a sudden, big band's over. It's like this academic ensemble that and you got John Allmark down in Providence, and I play in Mike and Joe Casano big band, and they have some cool stuff happening. But there's not a ton, and oftentimes, you're sight reading on those gigs, so the level is just not at like in your college big band where you're like rehearsing for 4 hours a week, and you're getting those solis perfect, and you're getting everything like lined up. That's a pretty high level, and then to not have that experience on a regular basis anymore once you become a professional musician is kind of wild, especially because your whole training you did that the whole way through. So I think the players that play in the big band, I think they crave that. And yes, we're all friends. We all play like in smaller groups together in various settings and various setups, and either with the horn players or the rhythm section. So everybody's cool and everybody's friends. But you're right, it's the best players in town, and they roll out, and they play a 3-hour gig for, I won't say how much it pays because it's kind of embarrassing, but I feel like everybody kind of checks their ego at the door, and everyone is happy to see each other. I know for me, it's like, man, and I get a chance to hang out with Ben Griffin and Clayton DeWald and Angel Sabero and Pete Finelli and Jeff Galindo and like all these people that that there's usually not more than one trombone on a gig, so if I can sit with those guys and learn from them and hang with them too, it's a beautiful thing, So, and with that band, it's really cool because everybody, and the funny thing is, everybody knows they're only getting 1 or 2 solos, right? Because there's 18 people in the band, so everyone's like, okay, it's my turn. So every song is like this, like epic thing. Like if this tenor player knows, okay, here's my one shot, here we go, So and I feel like everybody appreciates listening to each other, and everyone, and Alex and I are very open to like opening things up, and like, people can make up backgrounds, people can do whatever they want. We want it to feel free, even though we're sitting there reading charts, we don't want it to feel like, well, you have to repeat that 3 times. And if that, we want it to feel open and relaxed. So it's almost like, when you listen to the live Thad Jones, Mel Lewis stuff, and, you can hear it breathe a little bit more than the studio records. And, you can all of a sudden it's a hard bop quintet out of nowhere for 15 minutes. And then the big band comes back in, so, and I think we try to use that as inspiration for how we approach, playing those songs.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like it has a party vibe. It's got like a really intense live energy sound. Um, and not to mention, I don't think we've said this yet, but the music that you've written for you and Alex, it feels like it's, a heavy dose of funk, like definitely not traditional jazz swinging big band by any means. It's kind of much more almost like funk big band, Maceo
Well,
Parker kind of thing.
yeah, well, I mean, that's the music that we're playing a lot in small group settings, right? So why not take that instrument of the big band and that sound? There's nothing more, exciting to hear those 5 saxes, especially like when you get a voiced out sax soli, and hearing that brass, and like that sound is such a beautiful instrument, to
Hmm.
write with and to use as a composer, to use as a tool. But we just want to play the music that we're playing, that we're playing, there is some swingers in the book, but they don't get called too often. There's a couple, and Alex and I both write more straight ahead stuff as well. But for this band, it's definitely more funk, hip hop. We have some reggae tunes, we have some Afrobeat influenced vibe, some tunes, and
You sound a little bit sad about that. Would you want to play more swing stuff?
I mean,
Uh-oh.
I listen to jazz every day.
Yeah.
I'll say that, right? So I listen to
Yeah.
it every day, but the reality is does the audience want to hear that? And
Mm.
what kind of vibe? You said it's a party vibe. What kind of vibe are we trying to create? One of those things, our good friend Caroline Alden, who's a great photographer in the scene, I was talking to her, and she's like, the thing that she loved about our Sally O'Brien's residency was that, she's like, everybody that you wanted to see was either on stage or in the audience watching. Everybody
Yeah.
was there hanging. It was a musician hang. And that's the kind of environment we're trying to create.
Yeah.
And we want to bring that also, to circle it back around. I just talked about how we wanted to take it out of academia. So we took it out of academia, but now what we do on a regular basis is we bring it back in, and we do
Mm.
clinics and we do workshops, and we bring that music in, at the high school and middle school and college setting. So we've had groups all over the country, at all three levels, middle school, high school, and college, playing these charts. And sometimes we rewrite them to help the band directors fit their instrumentation or their ensemble or their needs. And kind of bring, and there's nothing wrong with playing, like, a funk arrangement that that you get on JW Pepper or something, of like Jungle Boogie, or but we think that you should be able to play funk and soul and hip hop and Afrobeat and reggae in a big band setting with new music that's being composed for that ensemble. And so
Mm.
we love bringing it back to the academic setting and teaching, and some really special evenings of music have gone on over the years, collaborating with young students and getting them excited about playing big band.
Yeah.
But still rooted in Ellington and Basie and Thad Jones, and
Mm.
that's still rooted right there. And we have, Alex is masterful at arranging and writing, in that Ellingtonian style. So we have a few tunes. We have this one tune off our first album, Rolo Tomasi, that is very much a you can hear the Strayhorn and Ellington influence. And then another one, 21st Century Traveler, off, I forget which one. Is that on the second or third? It's on one of the albums, but that also has like a very Duke Ellington, noticeable influence, even though we're playing funk.
Mm. Sure. Yeah, it's kind of amazing the repercussions of starting the group. Like I can imagine maybe starting the band, which is, for anybody who's never written a big band chart, that's a pretty huge thing. And, with time you get better in practice and it probably gets a little bit easier, but it's a huge undertaking to write music for, 18 players. Just to write one piece for 18 players is
Yeah.
a huge undertaking, let alone 3 albums. So maybe it starts off as like, oh, I want to play with my friends. I want to play music that's original or that's fun. I want to try and just like put a big band together because there's not a lot of big band. But then it kind of blossoms and blooms into this thing. And who knew that, 10 years down the road, you'd have 10 album or 10, you'd have 3 albums out and you'd be sharing your charts with schools, kind of like going full circle, from starting in college as big band players and then making your own big band, and then bring it back to schools and bring the music that you wrote and teaching kids with it.
Well, it did start in the academic setting, because Alex and I actually met together at UMass Amherst, as
Mm,
composition majors. We were both
okay.
in the master's program under the tutelage of Jeff Holmes, who, if you ever get a chance to play Jeff Holmes' music and his charts, and he's a wonderful composer and arranger. Brilliant. So we were both there at the same time, so our schedules mirrored each other, and we always, from day one of in that program, we were playing each other's music and like, working together. So that's where it all kind of started. And then, after those 2 years, I was already living out here in Boston, but Alex decided to move out to Boston, so it just kind of grew from that.
Yeah. So yeah, that I wanted to ask you. So I know that you grew up in Buffalo, New York, right?
Actually,
Actually,
Rocky.
okay, my bad. I guess I didn't know, but I knew you're from New York. I always see you posting about Chargers.
Yeah, Bills.
Bills.
Yeah.
I was about to curse. I will not curse, but I'm not much of a sports person, but I know that you're posting about some New York sports teams.
Yeah, man.
Um, I know that much. So I knew that you grew up Not in the area. So what did bring you to the area? Was it UMass Amherst?
No, I was living in Ithaca, New York, because I went to Ithaca College. That's where I did my undergrad work, and I had this jam band that we had started up back in the late '90s, and so even back then when I was significantly younger, I was meeting people in the scene and playing shows, and we played this show with this band called Fatbag. And and I remember the funny thing about it was we were the kings of Ithaca. We were selling out all the clubs all the time. And the guy was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to bump you guys because these guys really need this date that are traveling through here. Or if you want, you can open up for them." And we had already promoted, so we're like, "I guess we'll open up for them. We'll see it." And I remember we were talking smack. We were like, "Oh, who the hell's Fatbag? What's this?" And I remember walking up with the drummer, Aaron Jackson, and we were heading into the club, and I heard Adam Deitch sound checking. And Adam Deitch is the drummer in Lettuce now, and
Mm.
brilliant, and I could tell we hadn't even walked into the club, and I was like, "Uh-oh." I was like, "That's that's who Fatbag is," and they killed it. I mean, they blew our minds that night. And then afterward, we went to our space where we rehearsed both bands, and we stayed up until the sun came up and made music together and played. And so I had Sam Kinninger's phone number, who's the alto saxophone player that was playing with that group. And and he was telling me about Wally's. He was like, "Dude," he's like, "If you're ever in Boston, come. We're at Wally's every night. Come sit in, come hang." So I was like, "Okay." So I had his number, and I always had romanticized Boston a little bit because my dad is from Boston. So my grandma lived out here at the time. My aunt lived out here in Attleboro, south of town. And so as a kid, we always came out and visited. So I had kind of these romantic feelings about Boston anyway. And I was touring with a reggae band called John Brown's Body, which is half out of Ithaca and half out of Boston at the time. And so I was like, why don't I just move to Boston? That way, I'm still connected with the John Brown's Body crew, but I needed to leave Ithaca and kind of get to a bigger place. So that's how I moved here, to be honest with
Mm.
you. And I was like, "Oh, I have this dude Sam's number. I can go to Wally's." And that's pretty much why I came here. It wasn't for school. So it was weird, man. I think that's another thing that actually I used to my advantage a little bit, because I don't know about you and some of the younger players. I feel like Boston sometimes is very segregated. And here's the New England Conservatory musicians, and here's the Berkeley cats, and here's and it was like these pockets. And I remember I'd go to Wally's and play, and then the next night I'd be at this club, Matt Murphy's, and there'd be like a lot of NEC kids there, and I'd be like, "Oh, you don't know these dudes over here?" I was like, "Well, they just play like 3 miles away," and they didn't interact. So, because I tried to jump on board with everybody. I was like, I'm as somebody that didn't go to school here, I didn't have connections like that. For me, I made my connections through the club scene more than anything else. So maybe in some ways that was an advantage for me, because I wasn't biased by my social network or the musicians that I had gone to school with. I kind of was starting from scratch, a little bit. So then luckily enough, man, like I said, this is just one of those things, right place, right time. I had been sitting in at Wally's a bunch, and then the trumpet player had to leave, that had the gig on Sunday nights, had to leave town, an emergency, something went down. And my good friend Aaron Bellamy, who's a great bass player around town with the A-Beez, I had been hanging with him all the time. He's like, "Well, why don't you just jump on and take this gig?" So I kind of cut everybody in line at Berkeley that had been waiting to like get that gig, and so all of a sudden I was playing Sundays, and then soon enough we were playing Wednesdays too. So I was playing twice a week at Wally's, hosting the funk night. And it kind of happened fast, to be honest with you. It was like all of a sudden I had the gig. And so, Wally's is great now, but back then it was just a little bit different. There was like so many people sitting in, there were so many touring musicians stopping by like after their gig and to sit in. and it was just it was a little bit different. Kind of the neighborhood's changed now with Northeastern kind of taking over a lot of that neighborhood, and but back then it was more of a neighborhood bar and a neighborhood jazz club, playing to mostly a black audience, and it kind of it's not really the same anymore. Don't get me wrong, it's still awesome. I still love Wally's whenever I get a chance to go there to hang and sit in or just to watch. I love it. But that was Wally's was instrumental for me in terms of meeting everybody in the scene and learning about how everything worked. It was huge.
That's actually, that was the first time I saw you play, was you were with the A-Beez at Wally's. It was a Tuesday night. And I remember, I kind of had a similar experience as to what you're describing. Like I went to NEC and I thought I could rely on those connections and just like, okay, cool. I went to school, I met all these people, and where are the gigs? And then, it turns out everybody leaves town. Like, I don't think I know any NEC people. There's like very few NEC folks from my class who stayed in Boston. Most of them left. So at a certain point, I was like, oh shoot! Like if I want to play around town, I've got to start going to clubs and hanging out and meeting people. So that's what brought me to Wally's on a Tuesday. And I'm gonna be honest. I went to Wally's that night intending to play, and then I saw you, and I was like, oh.
Uh, uh,
I'm just gonna watch tonight.
you
Man,
should.
I heard you play and I was like, wow, like I'll come back another time. I mean, I love to play next time. I wouldn't pass up the opportunity to play with you again at Wally's if that was a chance. But yeah, man, it was great to hear you, and man, it sounded amazing. So that was
That's sweet of you to say. Yeah. So, how long ago is that?
a couple of years, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. So I must have just been filling in for a night.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Because I haven't steadily played that gig in probably a decade, or even more,
Yeah,
even more than that. So I probably was just jumping on board for an evening, filling in for Andrew Fogliano or whoever was usually playing horn on the gig
yeah.
at that time. Yeah, man, A-Beez are awesome. Everyone should go sit in. They we'll see as everything opens back up, in terms of how residencies keep going and how the weeknight club dates kind of pull themselves back together. Cause I feel like that's been the slowest in terms of getting things back together. But Aaron and Amy are awesome. You guys should
Hmm.
always go see them.
Yeah.
They're masters of their craft, and they're such beautiful human beings. And
Hmm.
I could probably trace almost all my gigs back to Aaron Bellamy. In Boston, he was so warm and welcoming and excited, to have me on board, and he really introduced me to so many people. So I mean, I'm
Mm.
eternally grateful to Aaron Bellamy and Wally's and everything that did for me in terms of introducing me to Boston.
Yeah. You were talking about how you've noticed Wally's changing over the years. What other kinds of changes have you noticed in the Boston scene since you've been living here?
Um, I feel like there's a little bit less opportunity for local bands, or at least maybe I don't know where they are. And like, so whenever I'm playing on a gig, when there's some younger cats, I'm like, okay, where are you guys playing? Where's the spot? There must be a spot that I don't know about, or there must be something happening. And because we had Wally's and we had this other place, Matt Murphy's, that was in Brookline, that was huge for like improvisational music and jamming and networking. But then there was also lots of little clubs like the Good Life and Les
Hmm.
Zigglemites, and a little
Yeah.
place where you could play jazz gigs. And I feel like those have gone away and they've been replaced by other places, but then the pandemic has killed some of those places as well.
Hmm.
And also when I was younger, I feel like there was a lot of rooms that were like either 200 to 500 capacity, that like you could put shows together within the local scene. And I feel like that's a little harder right now. I feel like Live Nation and like the corporate stuff has a grip on a lot of that. So it's just different. And like that has its place too. And, so I don't want to hate on that, because I love the fact that you can bring touring musicians into Boston, but it is a little bit of a challenge. It's funny. I was talking to a colleague that I play some gigs with, John Widley, great trumpet player, younger dude. I don't know if you know John, and I was like, where do you guys play? It's like, where's all the young, where's the 20-year-olds, and where's it all happening? And I fear that it's happening in dorm rooms on Instagram, and I fear like that people aren't actually connecting and playing music. And like, dude, I hear some stuff on Instagram that humbles me, and I'm like, holy mackerel, like, listen to this 21-year-old kid just like whizzing it on the trombone. I can't play that stuff. I'd have to shed all week just to try to like attempt to do any of that stuff, but then I'm like, okay, well, where can I go see them play? And then I see, oh, they don't have any gigs. They're not actually playing with people. So I guess I don't know, where it is now, and I wish there was a spot, that you could go hang. Like, I used to love it when some of the older, just people a little older than me would come to Wally's, and especially if they would cut me up, I was like, oh man, I got to go practice. Andre Hayward, I don't know if you know Andre Hayward, great bone player. He lives down in Houston now, or maybe he lives in Austin. He lives down in Texas. He's originally from there, but he was up here for a while, and he was in Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, and he's got a great duo record out with Steve Turre that they put out after JJ passed away, of all these JJ tunes, J and K vibe. And anyways, but he would come to Wally's, and I'm see him walk in the door. I'm like, oh boy, here goes.
Oh my
time
God.
to get killed. But that was the, I loved it. That was like the most inspiring things. Like, I'd want to practice at 2 a.m. when I got home. After like Andre would come sit in, like, oh, I need to go home and practice.
Who are some of those other like big players? Who are the generation above you, the really influential cats around town?
In Boston, it was Jeff Galindo and Andre Hayward were the two main guys that really blew me away, that I could, and those are people I had the opportunity to play with, in either big bands or sitting in or hanging. And I did study with Jeff, and so that was cool. I did study with Hal Crook, and so back then he was playing a lot of trombone. He was doing it every Tuesday night down in AS 220 in Providence. And so, and we had a residency. We had a weekly gig in Providence too, but it ended early. So we kind of try to finish it up quick so we could get over and check out, Hal Crook with, Bob Gulati would be playing drums, and, Dave Zino on bass, or, these cats. So it was always super inspiring to hear Hal Crook play, for sure. But I would say Andre and Jeff in terms of people that I would see on a regular basis, where they were the guys.
What has your experience in the scene been, generally speaking, with racism and or sexism? And I'm kind of curious to hear your perspective, doubly, not only as a performer and someone who's like performing around town in clubs and stuff, but also as a teacher with kids.
Yeah, well, I mean, Boston remains segregated in a lot of ways. I've played a lot in the scene stemming back from Wally's in, a lot of the black clubs, or quote unquote black clubs, played at Slade's and Bob the Chef's before it turned into Daryl's, and, played in, some of the more smooth jazz settings and stuff like that. And it definitely seems to be very much segregated, and I wish it wasn't. We actually, Alex and I have talked about this specifically, how to be proactive about making the big band more diverse. And we have a handful of female musicians that join us. Lehi Haruvi joins us on saxophone, and Eliza Block joins us on trumpet, and
Nice.
Tia Fuller has played with us, and Amy's played with us, and Bellamy. And so, there's women in the scene that certainly we've invited in as part of it. but I wish we had more, you know, and I wish there was a way more, going back to like the whole like where the young kids, or you know, I feel like if we're playing a show at Sally O'Brien's, which is all ages, like isn't there like, where's the young black sax player like that goes to Berkeley or NEC that, you know, would love to hear Tucker Antel shred, you know, like would like, and then we should be meeting that person and hanging out, and they should be on the gig, they should be on the list, you know, sitting in or filling in, subbing on a gig, you know. And I feel like that is certainly a gap in our outreach, you know. And maybe that's a conversation, maybe sitting down for lunch with Jason Palmer and Tia Fuller and trying to have them help us, bring some of the younger musicians in. But you know, same thing with, we don't have a lot of the black musicians that play with us. You know, Bijan Watson plays with us. Jeffrey Lockhart's in the band, guitar player. But it's you know, it's tricky. I think Boston in general is a little bit tricky on that, you know. But I do think it probably, a good first step would be to connect with some of the younger musicians in town.
What does that look like? Like, do you think you would literally like be hanging hanging out at colleges, like handing out flyers, like, hey, check out my show, come see my
Maybe,
show, or
you
like you
know,
going to college shows, like going to the Berkeley calf shows or something, or what
maybe,
do you mean?
yeah, maybe that could work. I don't know. You know, it's definitely an issue, and it's definitely something we've actively talked about. You
I
know,
was when you were talking about playing, I was thinking about how like I think a lot of people want to go to college maybe in New York, and they'll go to college in New York to play, and like the idea is that like New York is kind of like the destination point. The cats are there. There's already a lot of stuff happening there. There's all the clubs, famous players. Everyone's there. So it's like you go to college maybe just to hang out, but really you're trying to get out to the clubs. But I wonder if maybe there's less of that expectation in Boston. People are maybe thinking like, oh, like they don't know about you or Tucker or Tia or Jason. I mean, Jason just left, but about all the people that are here, the big people, like, foundational players in the scene here who are amazing. You can learn so much from, and the venues. And I wonder if there's kind of like a disconnect, like Berkeley or NEC or I don't know, whatever other people are around, maybe just like want to kind of stay in their thing. And
yeah,
I don't know.
maybe I think 20 years ago when I first got here, it was you saw more of it. I think
Wow.
there's less of it now. Like I said, I feel like it's a different culture. I feel like it's like making that badass video on Instagram is more important than going and sitting in somewhere. And maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But like I think it's just changed.
Hmm.
It's changed a little bit, and you know, I don't know if it's incumbent upon us as the working musicians in town to try to pull more people in. I don't know if it's incumbent upon the professors that teach at these institutions to like, oh dude, you should go check out this. Not for nothing, I don't know if I want to go on this road either, but a lot of the full-time professors ain't playing gigs either.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why they're not. I don't know where they are. You know, how many people teach at Berkeley? You know, where's everybody? You know, so
Hmm.
maybe they're comfortable and they just don't want to do it anymore. You know, maybe that love of performing. Like for me, like it's like, yeah, man, I'll go do a gig. like the music is for me the first thing that I think of when someone asks me to do a gig is what's the music going to be and who are the people I'm playing with.
Hmm.
If it's good people and good music, the bread is second.
Yeah.
You know, for me. Now that's like I said, that's I don't want to like if other people are like, well, I don't leave the house for less than $300. I get it. I totally get that. That's a different approach. Um, but you know, um, I feel like I perform and I play and I do what I do because I love playing. I love playing with people. I love interacting. I love the whole experience. I love that more than I love playing trombone, to be honest with you.
Mm.
You know, I feel like if I was a trumpet player or a pianist or something else, I feel like I would have the same thing. I feel like that human interaction and you know, that you get from your fellow musicians and that you also get from the audience, you know, that's like, man, I get high on that. You know, it's like
Mm.
that's it. That's it. You know, to communicate to have someone come to a gig and bring a piece of music that no one's played before that they wrote that week, and to be able to play that and make that come alive for another musician, or for me to, like, you know, like, I mean, I got just right here all these charts that I just put together for a gig last week of brand new music that we just wrote, you know, for us to like to come together and to make it come alive, you know, is huge. And that's what I do. So I don't, you know, and I feel like there's a lot of people like that too at school. I just don't know. I don't know where they are though. I wish they would come. You know, I wish they
Mm.
were out. Some of them have. You know, we had like I said, Eliza, you know, is NEC student, and she was playing with us a bunch. And John Michael Bradford, a trumpet player, he was at Berkeley. He's back down in New Orleans now, but he was playing with us a bunch. And you know, so we'd find a few here and there. But it seems to me that I'm sure there's amazing musicians and amazing players that make those awesome, sick Instagram videos that, like, that it would be cool just to have them sit in a section and or come hang, or small. It doesn't have to be with the big band. It could be with, like, you know, small groups. You know, come down to Wally's, come down to wherever. You know, it seems like there should be more of that. And Boston's always been transient. It's a college town. It should, and that makes sense, right? You know, people roll through and some people stay. You know, it was supposed to be temporary for me, you know, and I'm still,
Mm.
you know, I'm still here now. But so, you know, it's going to be transient. So for you to say like that a lot of your crew at NEC is no longer here, that's not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not super surprising. That's kind of how Boston is. Um, but while they're here, I wish they were more part of the scene. You know, that's one of
Mm.
the things when I was at Ithaca College, and I think this also is part of my training going back. You know, I had gigs with musicians that lived in the city of Ithaca. And, you know, I remember after, like, you know, we'd have trombone choir rehearsal. You know, I'd be like, oh, I gotta catch the bus and head downtown to go to another rehearsal or to go do this. They're like, where are you going? Like, who are you playing with? Like, what do you like? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, you don't know, man. There's all these musicians that are just live in the city of Ithaca that don't go to Ithaca and they don't go to Cornell and they're not associated with the college, and but they're just there, you know. So,
Mm.
you know, now I've always had it in my mind that performance was a big part. I was lucky. I grew up in Rochester, New York, and you know, my middle school band director, and he also taught the high school jazz band, was a guy by the name of Rich Thompson. And Rich, he's the main drum professor at Eastman School of Music now. And, you know, he's
Mm.
heaviest of the heaviest. So I saw him play with Count Basie. I saw him play with Wynton.
Wow.
He's super heavy. He just went to Eastman and stayed in Rochester. So, you know, he happened to be our teacher, you know. And then my band director also is a guy by the name of Roger Eckers, who's an incredible saxophonist. And he was actually an incredible violinist. And, you know, he was always playing gigs too, you know. So, like, my vision as a little kid of these teachers were, okay, they teach me during the day, and then they go play at night. They go play gigs, you know.
Yeah.
And so I saw that at a young age, you know, and I just always thought that's what you do. That's how it's done.
Mm. Yeah.
So, and I didn't, you know, then when I got into teaching and I got into the band director world, which is a whole nother world, we could have a whole nother podcast about high school band directors, because it's a little out there, you know. And a lot of them haven't picked up their instruments in years, and they're up there and they're great teachers and they do great work with kids, but for me, I think I'd be resentful of my job teaching if I wasn't still performing. And I also love teaching. I don't think I'd ever want to, you know, I've had opportunities to be a full-time road musician, and I've turned those down because of my teaching gig,
Mm.
you know. So um yeah, I don't. I just always have done both, and I'd be lying if I wasn't saying I don't. I wonder where some of these Berkeley professors are. Like, how come I don't see you? Like, do you play? Do you play gigs anymore? Like, what's like, because why are we doing it? No one's gonna get rich off this, right?
Hmm.
Like, none of us are buying a mansion in Brookline or something. Like, we're like, none of us are getting rich off this. So like, hopefully you do it for the interaction, you do it for the music, and you do for the connection to people and everything around you. So
Hmm.
um but that's why I do it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's kind of interesting. You're talking about getting offers to do like, major national or even international tours, full-time touring kind of stuff. Um, what kind of opportunities have you had in Boston? What kept you in Boston? You said it was kind of a transitory or like a sorry, temporary decision. You were thinking about maybe leaving. Where were you thinking about going? What kept you in Boston?
I mean, you always like, oh, I'm gonna go to New York, or go to LA and do the pop musician thing, maybe, but for me, I just was working. you know I had gigs, I was playing with great people and making great friends. I have a 14-year-old son. um, so that definitely it was a huge consideration of not, you know that only happens once, right? So like, if you're on the road and you're like, you miss and I were to miss him, like learning how to ride a bike, that would not be cool for me. Other people are, have found ways to deal with it, and but for me, that was also more important than touring. you know and I've done some touring, but if I can make the same or more money and have the same musical experience, and for the most part make it back to my bed every night, I'm cool with that. And I have been, I've been, probably almost every major city playing in this country over the years with some group in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's out west or down south, or not. I guess not so much in the middle of the country. Some spots down there I've missed, but it's great. But it's sometimes it's not as glamorous as you might think, because you know bus calls at 9 a.m., right? And you eat breakfast or do whatever you need to do to get on the bus, and then you get to the venue, and then you set up and you sound check, and then you go back to the hotel and you check in, and then you get showered and get organized, and then you go play the gig. And then you wake up the next day and you do the same thing. So like, it's cool and it's great, and I loved a lot of the touring that I've done, but it's hard work.
Yeah.
It's and it's not, it's not like you do have days off here and there where you can see the country and you can see things and you can do other things, but like, um it's a lot of work. It's hard work, and you're away from your family, and unless you're like in a really comfortable position where you're on like a tour bus and it's super comfy, and like, everyone's got their own hotel rooms, and that's a little bit different. But like, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when I was, gallivanting all over the place, we're in a 15 passenger van, maybe
Mm.
three people to a hotel room, or maybe some hippie's floor that you just slept on because that was the best you could do that particular night. And, it's not easy,
Mm.
you know.
Who are some of the acts that you've toured with?
Um, Touring with John Brown's Body,
Mm.
for sure. And then, like, my jam band back in the day was called Nosmo King, which is funny. But that band, so that was probably most of the touring, and like full, like, out for weeks at a time, months. But then I've done like little runs with Lettuce, and I've done, smaller little things here and there with other groups. But it's work. you know,
Hmm.
it is work, you know, and it could be great, but you know, like I said, if you get to that, if you're up on that, if you break that glass ceiling and you're kind of like at a level where you're super comfortable, then it could be, I guess, better, and you can bring your family with you, and like, you know, you have some more opportunities. But I've never done a pop gig. You know, I've never kind of done that whole thing.
What do you
So
mean a pop gig?
like, you know, like a lot of the you know, a lot of the people, especially Berkeley, I feel like is sometimes a factory for some of those pop musicians. So whether, you know, someone like, you know, Justin Timberlake, or, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
or Bruno Mars, or, you know, Beyonce, you
Sure.
know,
Okay.
like a lot of those kind of gigs, you know, I've never done any of those kinds. So, but those are grinds, you know, even though you're at a high level, that's a grind, you know, and
Hmm.
you're getting taken care of and you're comfortable, but it's hard work. And then
Hmm.
on the other, then you might not be being musically as satisfied as you would like to be either, if you're playing the same exact show every single night, you know, with
Hmm.
no wiggle room.
Yeah, no doubt.
But you know, but some people love that. Some
Hmm.
people love doing the pit orchestra thing, and they love like playing the same show, you know, all week, you know, or longer if you're on a longer run, you know. That's never been my thing per se, you know.
Hmm.
And I'm not good, man. I'm not. Some of these guys are just better trombone players than me that can do those kind of gigs. You know, I feel like
Hmm.
my role as a trombone player in the scene, you know, leans more towards the artist side of things than the hired gun that's going to come in and like nail the Book of Mormon and read it down perfectly and nail it. Just because that's just not where my interest took me. You know, at Ithaca, I was a classical major, and
Hmm.
doing all the orchestral excerpts and doing all that stuff, and but then once I finished that, I kind of was like, oh, I'm all set, you know, and I wanted to go in a different direction, you know,
So you
then
never took any orchestral auditions or anything?
no, not for real, no, no. A couple years ago, maybe right when it was, I guess a year and a half ago, I got to play with the New Hampshire Symphony,
That's cool.
out of
What was that
Nashville.
like?
It was cool, man. I was like, look, there's a bassoon right there. There's an oboe over here. It was awesome. It was like a last minute thing. They needed me. That's the only reason I got the call. Like, honestly, it's not my thing at all.
But
But
you
it
were
was,
part of the section, like you were playing
yeah,
first or
exactly. Yeah.
second chair.
But it was just cool. Like, even though I teach, in that setting, and I have an orchestra, and I do that, to sit there and like to have the conductor walk out and to stand up and everyone clap when the conductor comes out. It just felt cool. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
sure, for a lot of the other people, they were like, oh, another one of these gigs. But and I did more when I first moved into town. I was playing with Claflin Hill Symphony a little bit, which is out of Milford.
Well, I
And so
never heard of them.
yeah, a nice community orchestra.
Hmm.
So I'd play like sometimes in their summer winds concert series, and like, playing more like concert band type stuff.
Hmm.
So I love doing that, man. I mean, but I can't hang with like Angel and like, and like, the stuff that he does on that level with those players, which
Yeah.
is funny because like he'll bring a lot of them to like our gigs, after like a BSO show or something, and
Really?
like, oh man, like I got
Like
that
like
amazing.
Toby or Steve or something, or
What's that?
like Toby or Steve or
Yeah,
something?
like, or whoever. Yeah, like maybe not Toby's never come up, but his friend Han, like, just people like
Yeah, yeah.
he knows through the scene. Um, and they're like, "Oh wow, this is amazing!" I'm like, "Dude, you just played Symphony Hall. Like, like this isn't that amazing, But
That's pretty cool though. That's like such separate sides and having like a really profound respect for each other, you know. Han coming from what the opera, right? He's an opera trombonist, and then coming to see you play at Sally O'Brien's this little
yeah,
kind of I want to say dive bar, but it's like a pretty
yeah,
tiny spot.
yeah.
You do
Compared to one of
not
the
fit
most
on the
famous
stage.
concert halls in the world,
Right.
But
Well,
if I mean, I wouldn't change anything, but man, it would be cool for one moment to throw on a tux and to go play, I did study with Norman Bolter for a little while.
Hmm.
But like when I studied with him, I was at UMass, I was a little older, and we weren't doing orchestral excerpts and that sort of stuff. It was more conceptual, music concepts and sound production and different things. It was definitely, he understood that he wasn't training me to go take any auditions or anything like that,
Hmm.
So I did have a nice year of studying with Norman, but yeah, man, it would be cool. If I could somehow place myself and to be able to play like Mahler or something like that, like on a on that level. I'm pretty sure it won't happen unless I take a drastic career change and
I was gonna say, man, you put a whole big band together. Why not just put an orchestra together? You can put together the Brian Thomas Symphony Orchestra.
yeah.
play a couple Wagner pieces and a couple originals. Gonna play Sally O'Brien's.
Bring it all in. And that would be, it's beautiful music. I love going to the symphony, and I do. My dad is a huge classical music guy, so it's one of the things that got me into playing music is, he would take me to RPO concerts, Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, and we go to Eastman concerts, and he was, he's one of those guys though that like he knows everything about everything, and so he'd be like, "Oh, you can't tell that's the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra? Can't you hear the vibrato of the oboe?" I'm like, "Oh," he's like, he knows,
Wow.
stuff.
Is he a player or just a listener, like a kind of fan?
He always jokes, yeah, he plays the stereo.
Wow, that's
So
impressive.
yeah, he was a phys ed teacher as a job, but a music lover. He, like I said, he grew up in Boston. He always talks about how he would, go see the BSO back in, the 60s, and
Wow.
hand out programs and try to check it out. And I think he, one of my grandma's friends, she was a conservatory. She was ever in Hartford, and she was a pianist. And so she, kind of exposed him. He talks about like being exposed to Peter and the Wolf, and then from there, kind of as a little kid, and it just classical music clicked for him. So, I had that kind of pedigree in terms of like listening, not necessarily playing, but like
Yeah.
He talks about how sometimes I would take the baton and conduct, especially like for Symphony Fantastique or something. Like I was like, like Sergio Zawa or whatever, because you'd be watching videos of that, and like, but like I said, my path kind of went in a different direction.
Yeah.
But someday, I don't even have a big horn right now. I recently sold a Con 88H, so I mean, maybe I'll have to call it Ben Griffin. If all you trombone players out there, Ben Griffin, he's really getting into like trading and selling trombones, and he's trying to start up some stuff. So if any of you bone players out there need some gear, get a hold of Ben Griffin. Griffin Brass, I think, is all the tags on Instagram and everything, Facebook and everything. So maybe I need to hit Ben up and if there's a used Shire lying around or something that I can grab and get my bighorn chops back together. I don't know if I know how to use a trigger anymore, but I'd figure it out, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should probably wrap it up soon. Anything else that you want to mention or talk about?
Well, I appreciate you doing this, and I hope people are checking it out, and I think this is great. So congratulations to you on getting this up and running.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Really cool idea. I feel like a lot of podcasts have popped up, and which is cool though, because like you can really focus if you're a trombone player around the area. This is a podcast you want to listen to. So and see what's going on. So thank you for getting this going, and come sit in, man.
For sure.
Yeah. Come out to anytime you see me playing, man. Come out, make sure your horn's with you, and come sit in.
Appreciate it. Yeah, you said July 15th. Brian Thomas, ALC
We're back.
Big Band.
We're back.
July 15th, and You also just released an EP too, right?
Oh
But
yeah, yeah,
that was yourself.
yeah. That was just under my own name. I feel like I needed to put something out under my own name, so kind of a similar thing. You know, it was all done virtually. You know, which was cool. So that's if you know anywhere you stream, you could just do Brian Thomas and then BT Allstars. So one
Nice.
track is like kind of like an organ boogaloo vibe,
Mm-hmm.
soul jazz, and then the other one's more like a instrumental reggae vibe. So you know, and those are the, you know, circling back around. That's kind of like people are like, well, what do you do? You know, it's like, you know, well, I guess that all kind of falls under the umbrella of jazz, but like, you know, my stuff that is, you know, really more based on the groove and soul, you know, in soul jazz vibe, and then you know, Jamaican jazz and reggae, and you know, and there's a really robust reggae scene around here in Boston right now too, which is really cool. So
Would you still say that's robust? I feel like I've heard people say it's maybe kind of in decline.
I don't know, man. I'm playing a lot of it, you know. You know, you have the
Yeah.
Attractors, which is a great band that Rich Greco runs. You know, you still got Dub Apocalypse and like
Yeah.
that crew of musicians. You know, I play with a
Sure.
band Pressure Cooker, who, you know, we've been
Yeah.
around for 25 years. We just had a couple shows coming out of the pandemic, which was fun. Just back Papa Michigan, which was nuts. You know, so if you know, I know it's a trombone, not a reggae podcast, but like, wow, Papa Michigan's from Michigan and Smiley, which is like, OG dance hall singer from, from back in the day. So he came
Mm,
up from Jamaica and we backed him. So,
nice.
you
So
know,
yeah, there's still a lot of stuff going on.
there's stuff. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
stuff.
Do you know what's happening with Bulls?
I mean, I think they're done.
You think it's done?
I think Bowles is closed. I think the building's like been sold.
Yeah. That's a pretty big hit. It's a big bummer.
It is. I mean, but somebody, maybe it'll, I don't know when, but somebody will I have faith that all these places that have shut down, somebody will come in with an idea and a little bit of a budget, and partner up with a chef, you know, and like,
Yeah.
you know, something will happen. You know, it might
Yeah.
take a couple more years, but like people, you know, we're humans. You know, music's been a
Yeah.
part of who we are everywhere in culture, everywhere.
Yeah.
No matter, you know, going back all throughout history, no matter what side of the world you live on, you know, music is part of our culture.
Yeah.
So I refuse to believe that because places like Bowls shut down, that it's not going to still happen. We just got to
Sure.
find the next spot. You know,
It'll
that's
yeah.
when Matt Murphy shut down in Brookline, everyone was like, "Oh no, like where are we all going to go?" And then a lot of that shifted to Bowls, right?
Right.
So like it just kind of happened. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I have faith that it will. I don't know when, I don't know how, you know. I feel like a lot of it is happening in the suburbs a little bit. I feel like people are getting out of the
Mm,
city and there's like more things happening. There's more things popping up here and there. A lot of
I'm hearing
breweries,
that. What stuff are you noticing in the suburbs?
There's the Fallout Shelter in Norwood, you know, Three Square in Needham had some stuff going. Trillium now just opened up a new place in Canton, and they, you know, they're going to get music going. Um, Down in Pembroke, Soundcheck Studios, which is
Yeah.
basically they took all the equipment from Thunder Road and took it down there. You know, so everything that was up over there in Somerville is now down in Pembroke. So, you
Mm,
know, there's things, you know, will come around. I
yeah.
believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but like, you know, I feel like as humans and as culture and as a city like Boston that has so many young people, you know, not only students but young people working in the biotech industry, and like, you know, there's a lot of people here, and um, you know, music's got to be a part of people's lives. So I feel like the
Yeah.
venues will come back.
Yeah. I think so too. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
And whenever we figure it out, we know that there's going to be some trombonists there too.
That's right. That's right.
Brian Thomas on the scene, playing all over from Pembroke to Norwood to all across the world. And it's been great chatting, and I'm super grateful for your time. Really, thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll catch you later.
All right. Take care.
Peace.
Bye bye.
Thanks for listening. Comments, questions, send me an email at bossbonespodcast@gmail.com. That's BOSBONES podcast@gmail.com. Or follow me on Instagram, YouTube, or Spotify. You can follow Brian on Instagram at BT_trombone or BT ALC Big Band. Or you can find him at www.brianthomastrombone.com. Trombone Icon by Gregory Montigny from thenounproject.com. Special thanks to Celine and Jeffrey. The Bos Bones theme was written and recorded by yours truly, Michael Prentke. Again, please follow at Bos Bones on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, or visit at michaelprentke.com/bossbones. And that's a wrap for season 2. Thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate your support. If you made it this far, I'd love to know what you thought about the podcast. It's been a lot of work on my end, which has contributed to delays, so I'm sorry about that. And maybe one day I'll get to a season 3. There's so many more trombonists I'd love to interview. So if you're excited about more Bos Bones, let me know. And we'll see about season 3 one day. Thanks, everybody.